So tertianship is technically a third probation, so it's a third stage of Jesuit formation. Typically we do it about 5 years after ordination, and it's really centered on three things. Kind of going back and revisiting the spiritual exercises, the foundational documents of the Jesuits, the constitutions, the history of the society. So that's one part. The second piece is the 30-day spiritual exercises again. And the third piece is an apostolic experience. So it's three things, and of course you can do these in different forms. So some people take a year or 6 to 9 months to do them, but because of our work and our ministries, some people don't have that opportunity. So other programs are summer programs, and of course I did a summer program over 3 summers involving those things. There are really two pieces that are important. First is to exercise oneself in the school of the heart, kind of to get back in touch with that affective part of our lives. But the second is to synthesize, to bring together our intellectual, our apostolic, and our spiritual formation. So all of those experiences we've had as Jesuits, studying, ministering, listening to people, we spend some time bringing those together during tertianship and figuring out what God is saying to us, in a sense reaffirming our vocations. It's a good question. I went to India because I felt, for the two reasons, the two goals of tertianship, that school of the heart. I work in Washington, D.C., which is a wonderful place to work for policy and advocacy work, but I ended up doing a lot of kind of rational social analysis work, and I wanted a place that would kind of give me the opportunity to have that school of the heart, just to be with marginalized groups, marginalized people that have meant so much to me during my Jesuit life, to listen to their stories again in a different context, and that context I felt was India, and in particular because India is now the largest assistancy. There are more Jesuits from India than any other country or continent, more Asian Jesuits, and so I felt this would be a group that I want to get to know. So growth is a great word for India. But when you visit, it just strikes you everywhere. Growth, growing economy, growing population, growing hunger, growing displacement, growing needs, and of course a growing church. So it just seems that everything is growing there. And yet in that context the church is growing, but it's only about 2 to 3% of the population. And so it was my first time in a country that's not majority Christian, and that you know, the faith takes on a different meaning there. You see how people have to live it out in the context of a much larger dominant culture, but there's a real beauty to it, and obviously the church is affected by the culture or influenced by the culture in many beautiful ways. And so I was deeply drawn to the ways that the Jesuits pray through the liturgy, that the people pray through the liturgy, their religious devotion, their songs, their dances, their popular culture. It was a wonderful expression of the faith, and it was a great opportunity for me to learn about that. A lot of people have asked me about my time in India and how that might affect or shape my work here at the conference, and I think it's an important question. I think it's a great question. And I was reading a book recently where it quoted Freud, or paraphrased him, as saying something to the effect that if we could push a button and injure someone on the other side of the world, and yet at the same time that button would put money in our bank account, by the end of the week we'd have a lot of millionaires in Vienna. Now, I think that's a pretty dim view of human nature. I don't know if I subscribe to that, but I also know that there are ways in which our actions in the United States affect people in India. But I also think there are ways we can push a button, if you will, in the United States and do good in India too. So it's a way of looking at our world and my work when I came back and saying, what are the connections, good and bad? What are some of the ways that my actions our actions have an effect in India? And what do I mean? I mean things like the depletion of the natural resources in India by mining companies. You know, are there connections in the U.S. with those companies? But also just, you know, there's always a takeaway in these situations for us in the U.S. In other words, when you stand on the edge of an open coal mine and just watch this thing just growing and growing and growing, and see the people who are going to be displaced next week, I mean actually see them, visit with them, you begin to become much more conscious about your use of natural resources, because we know that we in the United States use more resources than anyone else in the world. And so My time in India has shaped my role as secretary by helping me ask questions about how our work in the United States, our ministry, can be of help to the Indian Jesuits and the people that I met, but also how I can be more intentional about the choices I make in the United States.